You cleaned it on Saturday. Not a half-hearted pass with a cloth and some optimism. A proper clean. You vacuumed, you wiped the surfaces, you did the dishes and put them away. You cleared the counters and the coffee table and the pile by the door that had accumulated during the week. By Saturday afternoon, the home looked genuinely clean, the specific, satisfying clean of a home that has been attended to properly, and for a few hours, you felt the particular calm that a genuinely clean home produces. By Tuesday, it was back. Not as bad as it was, not the full week's worth of accumulation, but the counter had things on it again. The coffee table had migrated objects. The pile by the door had started. The dishes from 2 days of cooking were waiting. The vacuum had been put away, but the floor didn't show it. The home was not dirty, but it was no longer clean, and the Saturday effort, 4 days later, had produced almost nothing that was still visible. This is the specific exhaustion that no cleaning routine ever addresses. Not the effort of cleaning itself, which is manageable, but the futility of it. The knowledge that the clean won't hold. That the mess will return by roughly Wednesday regardless of how thoroughly Saturday was deployed. That the cycle will repeat next weekend and the weekend after, indefinitely. Because the problem isn't how well the cleaning is done. The problem is structural. The problem is that the home is producing mess continuously, and cleaning is a reactive response to that continuous production, which means that no matter how good the cleaning is, it is perpetually catching up to a problem that never stops generating itself. The cleaning industry. The products, the methods, the cleaning schedules, the organizational systems is built on the assumption that this is the right frame, that the solution to a messy home is a better cleaning response. It is not. The solution to a messy home is a different relationship with the daily habits that produce the mess in the first place. The Japanese approach to home cleanliness operates from a different premise entirely. The traditional Japanese home, the home of someone who has absorbed the cultural habits of Katazuke, Kanso, Genkan, and is not cleaned more efficiently. It is lived in differently. The habits of daily life produce a different physical outcome, not because the person is tidier by nature or more disciplined by character, but because the specific daily practices they have absorbed make mess structurally difficult to produce. 6 habits. Each one is Japanese in origin. Together, they don't add to the cleaning routine. They replace the need for most of it. The home that runs on these 6 habits doesn't get cleaned on Saturday because the Saturday clean was never needed. The Japanese concept that unifies all 6 habits is Soji, not in the narrow sense of cleaning as a task, but in the broader sense of the relationship between a person and their space. The understanding that the state of the home is a direct reflection of the state of the daily habits that produce it. In traditional Japanese culture, the daily maintenance of a home is not a chore to be done before real life can begin. It is part of real life. A small, specific, continuous practice that keeps the space aligned with the person's intentions for it. The famous Japanese school cleaning ritual, in which students clean their own classrooms at the end of each school day, is not punishment or labor-saving. It is the cultivation of the specific relationship between a person and their space. The understanding that the space is one's own responsibility. That its maintenance is a daily practice rather than a periodic event, and that the habits of daily life either serve or undermine the quality of the space continuously. The 6 habits in this video are 6 specific applications of this principle. None of them is a cleaning habit. Each one is a living habit, a specific way of moving through the home, using the home, and relating to the objects in the home that produces cleanliness as a side effect rather than as a goal. Starting with the most architecturally significant, the one that happens at the threshold before you even enter. Habit 1. The threshold that changes everything. The single most effective dirt prevention habit available requires nothing except a decision made once, at the entrance to the home. Every time you enter it, take your shoes off. This sounds too simple to be significant. It is not. The Japanese Genkan, the dedicated entrance threshold, where outdoor footwear is removed before stepping into the living space, is the most upstream dirt prevention intervention available to anyone living in a home with a floor. The research on what shoes bring into the home is consistent and somewhat alarming. A 2008 University of Arizona study found an average of 421,000 bacteria on the outside of shoes, with the bacteria transferred to the home floor at a rate of approximately 90% on the first contact. Lead, pesticides, outdoor allergens, mold spores, and the particulate matter of road surfaces all enter the home on the soles of shoes and redistribute across every surface the home occupant subsequently contacts, including beds, sofas, and kitchen surfaces. The Japanese Genkan eliminates this transfer almost entirely, not by cleaning more frequently, but by intercepting the contamination at the point of entry before it enters the home. The floor that no shoe has ever touched, or has touched rarely, only in socks, is a different surface from the floor that receives outdoor contamination on every entry. It requires different maintenance, sweeping or mopping significantly less frequently, remaining genuinely clean between clean cycles rather than appearing clean while hosting invisible contamination. The Genkan practice is also the entry into a different psychological relationship with the home. The act of removing shoes at the threshold is a small, deliberate transition, a physical signal that the space being entered has different standards and different energy from the outdoor world. In Japanese homes, the Genkan is often a dedicated, carefully maintained entry space. A small step up into the living area, a specific place for footwear, a design feature that marks the boundary clearly. The transition is not just hygienic, it is intentional. The practical implementation for a Western home is straightforward. A shoe rack or basket at the front door, a comfortable place to sit for removal, and a pair of indoor slippers or socks designated for home use. The household rule: shoes off at the door, every time, for every resident and ideally for every visitor, is the only behavioral change required. The floor maintenance it eliminates is immediate and measurable. The most common failure mode: inconsistency, particularly for residents who have not established the habit, who wear shoes briefly indoors for convenience, or who don't apply the rule to guests. The Genkan only works as a system if it is maintained consistently. One shoe-wearing circuit of the kitchen transfers more contamination than 30 minutes of shoeless living. The habit is binary. Either the threshold is held or it isn't. The secondary benefit, which most people notice within the first 2 weeks: the home feels cleaner even when it hasn't been cleaned, because it is. The baseline level of floor contamination drops permanently, and the specific gritty texture of a floor that has received outdoor foot traffic, the sensation that the floor needs cleaning even when it was cleaned recently, largely disappears. The floor stays genuinely clean between cleanings in a way that no cleaning product can produce. Habit 2. Return everything immediately. The second habit addresses the most consistent physical source of domestic mess: the object that was used and put down somewhere rather than returned to its place. Katazuke, the Japanese practice of immediate return, the habit of returning every object to its specific place at the moment of finishing with it, before it has a chance to migrate, is the structural intervention that makes the difference between a home that accumulates and a home that doesn't. Not because it's a cleaning habit, because it prevents the accumulation that cleaning subsequently has to address. The mechanism is purely structural. An object that is returned to its specific place immediately after use is always in its place. An object that is put down somewhere after use, somewhere meaning the nearest available surface, which in most homes is the counter, the coffee table, the dining table, or the floor, is in a random location that gradually joins other randomly located objects to form the distributed, multi-surface accumulation that constitutes what most people experience as a messy home. The mess of the average Western home is not the result of large quantities of objects being introduced. It is the result of a relatively small number of objects migrating from their designated places to random surfaces, accumulating over the course of a day or a week into the distributed pattern that reads as mess. Remove the migration, replace the put down somewhere with the immediate return, and the accumulation stops generating itself. The Katazuke habit has a specific neurological basis that makes it easier to establish than most people expect. The immediate return, practiced as the automatic last step of any activity rather than as a separate task, requires no dedicated mental resource and produces no experience of effort. The object used for breakfast returned to its place before leaving the kitchen. The book closed and returned to the shelf before standing up. The keys placed on their hook as the first act of returning home, rather than put down somewhere temporarily. Each individual return takes 3 to 10 seconds. Together, across a day of ordinary living, they prevent the accumulation that would otherwise take 30 minutes of dedicated tidying to address. The most challenging implementation aspect is not the habit itself, but the prerequisite it reveals. For every object in the home to have an immediate return place, every object in the home needs a designated specific place. Objects without designated places cannot be immediately returned because there is no return destination. The Katazuke habit, implemented honestly, surfaces the objects that don't have homes, and those objects, once surfaced, face a specific choice: Either find a permanent home or leave the home permanently. This is the connection between Katazuke and the next two habits. The practical implementation. For 1 week, practice the immediate return for the 5 objects most likely to migrate in your specific home. The keys, the remote, the phone charger, the book currently being read, the items that come out of the bag when you arrive home. Just those 5, just those 10 seconds each, just those 7 days. The home will look measurably different by day 4. Habit 3. Own less than you think you need. The third habit is the most challenging in the channel's home library to frame honestly, because its honest framing runs directly against the consumer culture assumption that a better organized home is the goal and that more storage is the solution. It is not. The home that never gets messy is not better organized than the home that does. It contains fewer objects. Intentional empty space applied to the home is the specific Japanese practice of maintaining deliberate physical emptiness. Clear surfaces, uncluttered floors, negative space in cupboards and wardrobes. The visual and physical breathing room that comes from owning fewer things than the available space could accommodate. The empty shelf, the clear counter, the wardrobe that contains what is worn and nothing more. The relationship between quantity of objects and difficulty of maintenance is direct and unavoidable. Every object in a home requires surface space when in use, storage space when not in use, cleaning attention when cleaned, and retrieval and return effort when used. A home containing twice as many objects as are regularly used requires twice the maintenance effort for half the benefit. The objects that are not used but are stored generate ongoing maintenance burden. They accumulate dust, they occupy space that creates disorganization when other objects need storage, they are moved during cleaning without being used. They are sorted and reorganized without being reduced. The Japanese aesthetic of Kanso, simplicity, the absence of clutter as a positive design choice, produces homes that are easy to maintain, not because they are cleaned more efficiently, but because they contain fewer objects to maintain. The clear counter takes 10 seconds to wipe. The counter with 12 objects on it takes 4 minutes, and the objects need to be moved and replaced, and the space between them cleaned, and the objects themselves dusted. The May counter is functionally different from the cluttered counter, not just aesthetically but practically, in terms of the daily maintenance it requires. The practical implementation of May in a Western home is a process, rather than a single intervention, not a dramatic declutter, but the ongoing Kaizen principle practice of identifying one category of objects per week that is owned beyond genuine regular use and reducing it. The wardrobe items not worn in the past year. The kitchen equipment used less than once a month. The books already read and unlikely to be reread. The accumulated objects in the junk drawer, one category per week, reduced by whatever honest assessment of regular use identifies as surplus. The common failure mode, confusing potential use with actual use. I might need this, and I use this, are different statements. The Japanese Mottainai principle, regret over waste, is sometimes misapplied here to justify retaining objects beyond their useful life or beyond their genuine use frequency. The honest Mottainai question is not, might I need this, but does this object serve my current actual life? Objects that don't answer yes to that question are not serving the home. They are taxing it. The measurable outcome of a genuine MA practice over 3 to 6 months is a home that requires significantly less maintenance time per week. Not because the cleaning is faster, but because there is less to clean and less to displace and less to return and less to reorganize. The emptiness is not absence. It is the specific, positive condition of a space that has room to breathe, that has room for life to happen in without immediately generating mess. Habit 4. 1 minute of daily maintenance. The fourth habit is the one that connects the philosophy to the daily practice and makes everything else sustainable. The single, daily, 1-minute micro-maintenance that prevents the accumulation that would otherwise require the 30-minute Saturday clean. Kaizen applied to home maintenance is specific. Identify the one surface, area, or object category in your home that most consistently generates the feeling of the home being messy. The one thing that, when it's out of order, makes the whole home feel behind, and give it 60 seconds of daily attention before anything else happens in the day. Not the whole house, not even the whole room, the specific most mess-generating point. 60 seconds every day. The behavioral science behind this is the same as Kaizen in every other domain. Small, consistent intervention compounds into a substantially different outcome over time, and consistency is maintained precisely because the intervention is small enough to proceed without motivation, optimal conditions, or dedicated mental resource. The 60-second maintenance happens before the motivation to skip it has time to form. The most common, most mess-generating points across different home types. The kitchen counter, which receives mail and keys and bags and produce and cooking detritus, and becomes the de facto dumping ground for everything that enters the home without a specific destination. The bathroom counter, which receives every product used in the morning routine and is rarely fully reset afterward. The floor at the base of the stairs, which becomes a staging area for things going up and things coming down, and gradually fills with both. The dining table, which in many homes serves as a secondary desk and accumulates the paperwork of daily life. For the kitchen counter specifically, the 60-second Kaizen is specific. 1 minute every morning before the day begins to return everything on the counter that doesn't belong there to its designated place. Not to clean the counter, to clear it of the objects that have migrated to it since the last morning. The cleaning that follows takes 10 seconds because the surface is clear. The alternative, allowing 3 days of migration to accumulate before addressing it, takes 4 minutes because each object needs individual assessment and return. The compound effect of this practice over 30 days is visible in a measurably different baseline level of home maintenance. The home that receives daily micro-intervention never accumulates to the level that requires the dedicated cleaning session, because each day's migration is addressed before it joins the previous day's migration to form a significant backlog. The most common failure mode. Scope creep. The 60 seconds expanding into 20 minutes of more comprehensive cleaning that burns through the motivational reserve and leads to the habit being skipped the following day. The Kaizen home habit is specifically limited to 60 seconds, specifically targeted to the most mess-generating point, and specifically not extended into broader cleaning, even when the broader cleaning would also be useful. The limitation is the mechanism. Habit 5. Reduce what enters the home. The fifth habit addresses the supply side of home mess, not the objects already in the home, but the continuous flow of new objects that enter it daily and add to the maintenance burden if not actively managed. Mottainai, the Japanese concept of regret over waste, the cultural value placed on the full use of what is already owned, applied to home maintenance, is the practice of treating the home's threshold as a conscious filter. Every object that enters the home must earn its entry, have a specific destination within it, and represent either a replacement for something leaving or a genuine addition that the current inventory cannot provide. The average Western home receives a continuous flow of incoming objects that is rarely examined consciously. Purchases that seemed necessary in the moment, packaging that enters with every delivery, free items that seemed wasteful to decline, objects transferred from other locations that don't yet have a destination, items brought in temporarily that become permanent by default. The accumulation is not usually dramatic on any given day. Across a week, a month, a year, it is substantial, and every object that enters without a specific destination becomes an object without an immediate return place, which means it becomes an object that migrates to a surface and contributes to the distributed accumulation that constitutes mess. The Mottainai home filter is a practice of pausing at the threshold, not the physical threshold of the Genkan, but the decision threshold of acquisition, and asking a specific question before any object enters the home. Does this have a specific, regular use place to live within the current home inventory, or will it join the objects that don't have homes and migrate to surfaces? The answer to this question, applied honestly at the point of acquisition rather than retrospectively in a declutter session, prevents the accumulation before it begins. The delivery that arrives overpackaged. The packaging is immediately removed and discarded at the point of unpacking, and only the object enters the home. The free item offered at an event. The Mottainai question asks whether it will be regularly used or become a drawer-filling, never-touched item. The purchase. The specific destination within the current inventory is identified before the purchase is completed, rather than after it is delivered. The Japanese practice of ikagetsu rule, a version of the 1-month rule for new purchases, in which an intended purchase is delayed by 1 month and only made if the need is still present at the end of the month, is a specific application of Mottainai thinking to acquisition. Most needs that feel urgent at the point of impulse are not present 30 days later, and the objects that would have entered the home in response to those impulse needs don't. The practical implementation. For the next week, at the moment of every acquisition, purchase, receipt of a delivery, acceptance of a free item, pause and identify the specific home destination for the incoming object. If no specific destination exists, the acquisition is deferred until a destination can be identified or an existing object can make room for it by leaving. Habit 6. Design for cleanliness. The sixth habit is the one that makes all the others structurally easier. The deliberate design of the home's surfaces and arrangements according to the Japanese principle of Kanso, simplicity, the aesthetic of empty space as positive rather than vacant, the arrangement of the home such that the clear surface is the default state rather than the achieved state. Kanso applied to home design is not minimalism as aesthetic fashion. It is the practical arrangement of the home such that the habits described in the previous 5 chapters can operate with the least friction possible. The Genkan threshold is clearly defined and provides an obvious place for footwear. The Katazuke return places are specific, accessible, and logically located. The empty surfaces have nothing on them to displace and nothing to accumulate. The Kaizen daily maintenance target is visually clear enough that 60 seconds actually addresses it. The Mottainai filter is supported by a home arrangement that has no undesignated storage into which acquisitions disappear. The specific Kanso interventions that produce the greatest maintenance reduction are surface-based. The kitchen counter cleared of everything that does not have active daily use on that surface. The bathroom counter cleared of everything except the 1 or 2 items that are used every day, without exception. The coffee table cleared of everything except a single deliberate object or arrangement. The floor cleared of everything except furniture. No objects living on the floor, no piles, no temporary staging areas. Each cleared surface has a specific effect on the maintenance of that surface. A clear counter can be wiped in 3 seconds. A counter with 12 objects on it cannot be wiped without either moving 12 objects or cleaning around them, producing a technically wiped surface that is not actually clean and that communicates the continued presence of clutter, even after the cleaning effort. The Kanso arrangement also has a specific psychological effect on the experience of the home. Clear surfaces read as clean, even when they haven't been recently cleaned, because the visual signal of cleanliness is the absence of clutter rather than the presence of shine. The cleared counter that hasn't been wiped in 2 days reads as cleaner than the cluttered counter wiped this morning, because the brain processes surface cleanliness primarily through visual complexity rather than through hygiene accuracy. The practical implementation is a room-by-room surface audit. For each room, identify every surface and every object currently living on it. For each object, apply the Katazuke question. Does this have a specific designated home elsewhere in the home that it could return to? If yes, return it. If no, apply the question. Does this object genuinely need to live on this surface, or is it here by default? Objects that survive both questions are legitimately on the surface. Objects that don't, which in most homes constitute 60 to 80% of the objects currently on surfaces, are either relocated or removed. The resulting surface arrangement is the Kanso arrangement, the default state of the home in which the clear surface is the starting point rather than the goal, and the maintenance of cleanliness is a matter of maintaining the default rather than returning to it after significant departure. The home cleaned on Saturday that is back by Tuesday is not evidence of insufficient effort. It is evidence of a structure that generates mess continuously and a habit framework that responds to it reactively, rather than preventing it at the source. 6 habits, each one Japanese in origin. Together, they address the mess at the 6 most common points of its generation. The threshold where outdoor contamination enters, the moment of object use where the migration to random surfaces begins, the quantity of objects that creates the maintenance burden, the daily point where microaccumulation becomes visible accumulation, the flow of incoming objects that continuously adds to the inventory, and the surface arrangement that either makes cleanliness the default or makes mess the default. Genkan, Katazuke, Kaizen, Mottainai, Kanso. None of these habits is a cleaning habit. Each one is a living habit, a specific way of moving through, using, and arranging the home that produces cleanliness as a side effect of ordinary daily life, rather than as the result of dedicated cleaning effort. The home that runs on these 6 habits doesn't need to be cleaned on Saturday, because by Friday, nothing has accumulated that Saturday would need to address. The surfaces are clear, the floors are clean, the objects are in their places. Not because anyone cleaned them, because the daily habits that produce mess were replaced, one small practice at a time, by the daily habits that don't. If this felt like something your home needed to hear, there's more waiting for you here.